When it comes to strong writing, less is often more. So cutting unnecessary words from your manuscript is one of the best ways to elevate your writing and make it sound more professional, polished, and engaging. You can immediately tell when an author is extremely intentional with their word choices. They make every single word matter. Amateur writers, on the other hand, often veer into overwriting, where there are more words on the page, but the author is actually saying much less, which can clog up the story and make the reader disengage. So today I want to talk through 5 technical tactics for reducing unnecessary words so that every single line sings on the page. These tips will apply for any narrative format, including short stories, novellas, novels, and narrative nonfiction. If you're a writer looking to improve your craft, I recommend subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Every week, I either give tactical writing advice like today's video, or I talk about the publishing industry since that is my professional background. I'd love to have you join our amazing community of authors. Before we get into the techniques today, it would mean a lot to me if you just hit that thumbs up button. It just takes a second, but really helps out my videos with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much. The first words to cut from your manuscript are filter words. These words create a barrier between the reader and the narrative by filtering the events of the story through the narrator or POV character. Remember that if you establish your POV correctly, then the reader should already understand and internalize that the events of the story are being narrated from that perspective. If you're confused on POV, I have another video that goes into the different types of POV and how to choose, so definitely check that out. Filter words often include sensory verbs like see, hear, feel, or verbs that indicate the character's perception like realized, learned, decided, etc. You can often think of filter words relating to the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. And instead of allowing the reader to directly inhabit the events of the story and the scene, we're being told how the character is interpreting or perceiving the events. This can weaken the impact of the writing, so removing them is going to make your narrative so much more immersive and engaging and immediate feeling. You're going to put us directly in the events of the story and allow us to fully inhabit the character's experience. Let's look at a couple of examples. Susan saw a shadow creeping along the hallway. Here we are in Susan's POV in close third person, so we can just say a shadow crept along the hallway. We already understand that it is Susan perceiving this. Here's another example. I felt disturbed as I watched the film. We know that this is in first person and that it's the narrator's interpretation, so we can just say the film disturbed me. Do you see how removing those filter words makes the prose so much cleaner and more dynamic? The next words to cut from your manuscript are words indicating passive voice. In general, passive voice tends to be a weaker form of writing than active voice, because it's a bit less direct, it's more clunky, and less engaging. Words like is, was, were, or phrases including by can indicate passive voice. But using those words doesn't necessarily indicate passive voice, so you need to check each time you're using it. Let's look at an example. The ball was kicked by John. This could be revised to John kicked the ball. We just made the sentence clearer, easier to read, and we shaved off 2 words right there. As you're going back through your manuscript, try to watch out for instances of passive voice. As I said, it's not always necessary to revise passive voice because you can use it intentionally, such as if you want to be vaguer in describing who is doing an action. This can build suspense. For instance, if the narrator or POV character can't identify who did a specific action. But I bet you're going to come across at least a few instances of passive voice that you can revise to be active. The next words to cut from your manuscript are weak or unnecessary adverbs. Adverbs can dilute the impact of your writing and make it less precise if they aren't used strategically. This includes adverbs like suddenly, really, very, and a whole host of other adverbs ending in ly specifically. They often add unnecessary fluff to your sentences without adding substance or contributing to the meaning. Typically, there is a much stronger descriptor that you can use in place of that adverb. I'm not saying that all adverbs are bad, and I definitely use a bunch of adverbs, some of which are probably not necessary in my videos when I'm speaking. But again, the key is to make sure you're using them all intentionally and strategically and that they are contributing to the scene. I saw a great example of this recently. Think of the phrase killing me softly. In this case, the adverb is interesting because it is contrasting with what we know killing to be, something violent, right? But the phrase killing me violently is not quite as effective because we presume the act of killing to be violent. Let's look at a couple of examples of unnecessary or weak adverbs. I whispered quietly. Whispered already implies that someone is being quiet, so you can just say I whispered. She was very tired. She was exhausted. Do you see how the one word exhausted literally means very tired, so we can use a stronger word there? If you're enjoying these tips, I have great news. I have so much more content waiting for you on my newsletter website, chapter-break.com. I'm doing exclusive interviews with literary agents and best-selling authors and deep dives into specific editorial issues from my background as a developmental book editor. Signing up to the newsletter is free, and as a bonus, you will get my story self-assessment worksheet. This is a quiz I designed to help you get unstuck with your current draft, see what's working well, and what you can improve on the next iteration. The links to download your free story self-assessment worksheet and check out Chapter Break are in the description. The next words to cut from your manuscript are excessive dialogue tags. Overusing attributions in dialogue like he said, she whispered, they shouted, can clog up the narrative and become cumbersome to read. Of course, some amount of dialogue tags or attributions are necessary to clarify who is saying what, but if you use too many of them, they can disrupt the flow of the scene and end up being distracting. Here's an example. I can't believe it, Jane said. What's the matter? John asked. I lost my keys, she replied. Did you check the kitchen? He questioned. When every single line of dialogue is followed by a attribution or tag, it makes the exchange feel very mechanical and stilted. So to improve the flow of the dialogue, we can reel back how many tags we are using and also strategically use descriptions of the character's movements throughout the scene, what I like to call choreography descriptions, to indicate who is saying what. Here's an example of a revised passage. Jane slammed the door behind her. I can't believe it. What's the matter? John turned to face her. I lost my keys. He gestured toward the kitchen. Did you check in there? Do you see how the reader can follow who's speaking just from the description of action and contextual clues? This allows the conversation to flow smoothly and naturally without sacrificing clarity. Of course, if you need to use a dialogue tag here or there, he said, she said, etc., that's totally fine. Just make sure it's warranted. The final words to cut from your novel are pet words or phrases. These are words or phrases that are specific to you that you tend to overuse in the story, and you probably don't realize that you're doing it. Every author has their favorite words and phrases, but overusing them can start to feel repetitive because the reader will start to pick up on the usage of this specific phrase because it is unique to you and probably very striking, and it'll start to feel tired when you're using it over and over again. This often comes up when we see an author describing a character's appearance in the same way over and over, such as sky blue eyes or flaxen hair. These can admittedly be hard to spot on your own because you probably don't realize you're using these pet phrases. So I recommend reading your work aloud in order to surface these, or potentially asking a reader if they have come across any specific phrases that were overused. Then once you know what those pet phrases are, you can run a search through your manuscript for those phrases and vary up your prose as needed. I hope this helped you identify some easy ways to cut words from your manuscript and make it so much stronger. My goal is to empower you to make your prose even more powerful and intentional. Let me know in the comments which of these words you find in your manuscript. And if you're looking for some more easy ways to improve your writing, check out my video on techniques for elevating your craft. I have some more tactical advice there. And before you head out, don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet as well as my newsletter links there in the description below. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on my next one. Thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.